Okay, great. So this is 2:31. Let's go ahead to get it started. Hello, everyone. Very welcome to the keynote speech session for ASCE Award. My name is Ming Liu. I'm an associate professor at NC State University. I'm also the past chair for ASCE CRC. On behalf of the ASCE CI Construction Research Council, it's my great honor to welcome Professor Keith Molina of the University of Colorado to give us the keynote speech for the ASCE Purifoy Construction Research Award. Purifoy Award is to recognize individuals who had made outstanding contributions to the advancement of construction engineering through research and development of new technology, principles, and practice. Professor Keith Molina was selected by the ASCE-CI Award Committee to receive the prestigious Purifoy Award for his outstanding contribution in construction engineering field. The ASCE-CI Award Committee is comprised of Professor Vinit Kama, who is the chair, Darcy Abraham, Chema de la Garza, Carol Haas, Iris Tomini, and Ms. Katerina Lochinova of ASCE. Professor Keith Molina is K. Stanton Lewis Professor of Construction Engineering and Management and the Interim Dean of the College of Engineering and Applied Science at the University of Colorado. He has received numerous awards and honors, including being selected for the National Academy of Construction, awarded the ASCE Thomas Finch Rowland Award, received Journal of Engineering Construction Architecture Management Outstanding Paper Award, and selected as a Public Works Magazine Top 50 Trendsetters, and U.S. General Service Administration Construction Excellence Peer. Please help me to welcome Professor Keith Molina for his keynote speech for the ASCE Purifoy Award.
Thank you, Min, and everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. It's just such an honor to be here. Been involved with the Construction Research Council for 25 years now or more, and really have fond memories of the Purifoy lectures in the past. I think my first one was Bob Carr's. I remember Don Hancher's and Jimmy Hinsey's especially. For those of us who attended those, we remember they were at 7 a.m. in the morning all the time, kind of traditionally, and this is certainly a different way to give it, but just honored to be here. We have such a great and supportive community. I'm just so fortunate. I guess I wanted to say thank you to a few folks before I jump in here. The nominators for this award, Chema de la Garza, Simon Alvarez, Jeff Russell, and Cliff, thank you for thinking of me here. There's just so many deserving people. I appreciate the nomination. I also want to just give a shout out to my mentors, Tony Songer, Jim Diekman, and Joanne Silverstein. Really just helped me to get here and really remained good friends throughout my career. And want to thank the CRC leadership. It's been a little over 20 years since I served in the role, but I really appreciate everything that you've been doing to keep this going through the pandemic and all of your leadership. It truly is a exceptional community that we're part of, and thank you for continuing to lead it. So I'm going to give a brief presentation here. The goals of my presentation are maybe a little different than you might expect. I do want to share my story, but I want to talk a little bit about my background and just my privilege and the opportunity that academia has given me, and really want to reflect on that a little bit. I'll discuss my research. I know that's why I was selected for this award, and want to kind of highlight my research, but I do want to take this opportunity, if I can, to use this platform just to promote a little bit of discussion on where we're going with higher education, and hopefully generate some conversations from that. So with that introduction, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. See if I could ask maybe, Min, can you see my screen? I just wanted to be sure.
Yes, I can see it very well. Thank you.
Okay, great, great. Well, as I said, what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of my own background, highlight some key areas of research that I've had the opportunity to work on, and then just finish in a little bit of a reflection. I have a picture here of one of my fondest memories here at the University of Colorado. For those that don't know me, I'm a graduate 3 times of the University of Colorado. Spent some time teaching at Georgia Tech before I came back. But this is a picture of our 50th CEM reunion, and I put that up there just kind of thinking about this and this Purifoy Award. I just have to say this, I don't see this as an individual award. I'm just part of such a wonderful community, you know, have such outstanding PhD students. I wish I could, you know, mention all of them, the 20 plus that I've advised directly, and you know, close to 50 more that I've been a part of your committees on. But I really see this as a award for many of us who've collaborated. I just took a quick reflection. I looked at my over 250 papers, journal papers, conference papers, books, and technical reports, and I noticed that I only had 1 sole author publication. So in my 25 plus years, I've only done that once. And so this truly is, you know, because of students, because of collaborators, and just I really do get the most enjoyment out of working along with everybody. So thank you again to all the collaborators who've been a part of this. I want to give you my background just so you have some context, especially for some of my points at the end of this. And the way I'm going to do that is through some projects, through some pictures of projects. I think that's how we all in construction kind of talk about our you know, careers, is by going with our families and pointing to projects that we've worked on, or looking at pictures. And I really have been just so fortunate to be able to work on different projects. I'll start, this one's maybe not the significant in the scheme of things, but it's really significant to me. My father ran a construction company, and this was the first project I ever worked on. I got to do demolition and renovation of this residence, and I always thought that I was going to take over my dad's construction company. But he really wanted me to go to college. He wanted me to be an engineer or be a professional, as he said. And I'm a first-gen college student. My first 3 years after school were working for him at a junior college. And you know, I talked to him last night, and you know, now I'm dean of the same college that I went to, and he can't believe it. I can't believe it either. And you know, that privilege that I have, I'll be honest, I don't know that I would get into my own university today. I think things have changed a lot. You know, working part-time, coming from a junior college, and having a lot of pressures of the industry, of you know, life. We have to think about that with our students today. This next picture is the Sunspot Lodge here in Colorado. I moved out to Colorado, and I was a cost estimator. Spent my time doing cost estimation and construction management, about 7 years with a startup company, and really learned how to be in the construction industry, be an estimator, begin to be a professional, and really learned a lot from that. But what helped me to grow was coming back from my master's and PhD. This is a picture up in the mountains of a Department of Energy environmental waste Superfund site. And I really learned what estimating was about when we had a lot of uncertainty in quantities, uncertainty in costs, and learned more that estimating was not just a single point estimate, but dealt with risk, and different risks drive our success of our projects. I'll come back to that here in a few minutes, but from there I finished up my PhD, did my master's with Jim Diekman and my PhD with Tony Songer, and got a chance to work out, did a lot of work for the Washington State Department of Transportation around two areas. One was project delivery. They were doing design build project delivery, and that's what I did for my dissertation. And then also risk analysis. This is a photo of the Alaska Way Viaduct, where I did a lot of risk analysis and alternatives analysis for them, and a number of studies. That really launched my career a little bit further in this area of risk analysis and project delivery. This is a photo of the Bay Bridge. I was really lucky to work with a few colleagues, Cliff Shake-Snyder, Stu Anderson, David Ashley. We got called in to do a review on this project, and looked again at areas of risk, of cost, and helped the agency develop their risk-based cost analysis. That actually got us a crazy call one day from Cliff Shake-Snyder got to go down and work on the Panama Canal. Here they had an expansion, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but I again got to work with David Ashley and Stu Anderson and a number of other folks on probably one of the most exciting projects in my career. And I'll share a little bit of that with you. And then the last few years, I've been working again, kind of full circle back to the Department of Energy. But instead of environmental management and Superfund sites, been working on large science projects. So this is a project where they're shooting neutrinos from a particle accelerator in Chicago out to a mine at the Sanford site that's a mile underground in hard rock. And they're trying to detect neutrino collisions and discover dark matter. Been working on that for about 5 years now, and been able to bring that into my classes, and again, really learn how to be a better estimator and how to move the industry along. And then finally, I'll come back to this one. This is the ITER fusion project in France. And again, worked on this with a number of colleagues, and then spent some time over in France working on this. And I'll come back to this just to kind of go for full circle. So where I started, and again, one of the reasons I was given this award was the work in project delivery. And I guess I put these figures up because I've been using these figures for 25 years. This is how I taught project delivery in my first classes out at Georgia Tech, and how I'm still looking at things 25 years later. We look at project delivery, we look at performance, and we look at payment terms and how these things relate together. It's interesting, I've done similar studies in Washington State starting in 1997, looking at performance of projects and delivery methods, and I'm still doing that today with South Carolina Department of Transportation, almost the same questions. The same with, did a study for the US Congress in 2005, and then just wrapped up another study about 2018, again, trying to figure out how project delivery methods impact performance. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit in two research projects. This first one is from my very first CRC presentation back in 1997. We looked at, Tony Songer and I looked at trying to predict performance of design build projects in the public sector. And he told me I should put my results up on this thing called the internet back then. And this is probably, people don't remember what Netscape is, but this was one of the first decision support systems on the web. And Tony told me someday we'd be streaming video on the web, and I didn't believe him. I wish I would have. I would have invested in Netflix and probably gotten a little bit more. But what I didn't understand there was, we just used a linear regression model to try and predict performance. It's really so much more complex, and I've learned about that over the last 20 years. I wanted to just show some results of a project that I did with John Messner, Rob Like, Brian Franz, and this is Brian's PhD work, and Basad Ismaili as well worked on this large group of folks trying to predict project performance. And what we looked at again were these ideas of delivery methods, payment terms, and procurement processes. But what that really comes to is a delivery strategy. And what we're finding is that these methods aren't so cut and dry as I thought they were in the mid-90s. They're, have a lot of underlying latent variables. We discovered some called group cohesion that we defined, and team integration, and we looked at how those work together. Instead of just looking at linear regression models, really evolved in that paper that was the Rowland Award, Finch-Rowland Award that we won for bringing in structural equation modeling into construction engineering and management has really helped, I think, to understand the latent variables and all the intricacies. And so, where I was trying to, with my dissertation, just come up with a linear regression, it's much more complex than that. Just here's an example. We mapped well over 200 projects against these axes of team integration and group cohesion. You, as my colleagues, will know when you get data points like this is not what you're hoping for, right? You're hoping for a nice predictive line. So when we first put it up, we didn't think there was much there. But then when we looked a little deeper, we found that 70% of the projects that were delivered late had below average levels of team integration. And we also figured out that 60% of the on-budget projects had above average levels of group cohesion. So we really did think there was something there. But when we looked at the delivery methods, they really didn't correlate. So, all this time I'd spent trying to understand how delivery methods correlate, I'm really learning that it's only one of many, many factors, right? So we did in the structural equation model find out some really good underlying variables. Those were, is it a single contract? When is the design builder hired? And when are the trades hired? Also, we found that open book contracting had a big impact on success, as did whether the trades were pre-qualified. So rather than just look at these simple project delivery methods, we ended up looking at different classes of projects. And I think this is some really exceptional foundational work that is going to help move the industry forward. And I do think in the next 25 years, we'll see more of this. And I'll hit that again at the end. So I want to make sure we stay on time here. I'm going to kind of go quickly through the work that I've done in cost estimating and risk analysis. And again, when I was working in industry, I did a lot of hand takeoff and applied loose contingencies and didn't really understand the uncertainty around estimating. And so over the years, I've used this graph a lot. It was developed again with Stu Anderson and Cliff Shake-Snyder, and really trying to understand how cost is a range and how risks impact that range. So if we have a lot of risks come together as the project moves forward, that range gets smaller, but it could be in the high end of the range. Or as we move forward and few risks are realized, it can be on the low end of that range. Of course, you really can't build a project with a budget that's not determined. So most owners try and start with contingencies and then work those contingencies down. And so I've spent a lot of my work trying to help owners and come up with new ways to define contingencies so we can do a better job of finishing projects on time and on budget. And so I thought I'd illustrate that just through this one project. And there's an article on this in the Journal of Construction Engineering and Management if you'd like to take a look at it. It really illustrates a lot of the work and was really a seminal point in my career along with a number of colleagues. But if you're not familiar with the project, it was the US handed the canal back over to the Panamanians and they wanted to expand it. To do that, they went out with a public referendum and really wanted to make sure that they were going to get the cost right, to publicly state what those costs were. And so that's where we came in to help them define risks and come up with costs. And I ended up staying to help them define their delivery method as well. The locks were basically trying to put larger ships in 100 years after it was built. And to do that, they had to have water-saving basins because the canal itself is actually a lake. So if you've never studied it or been there, the way that the US built it after the French started it and didn't finish it was to build locks and build a lake in the center of the country. And so there were 7 contracts here. One was deepening of the channel within the lake. Another was deepening of the Atlantic side, deepening of the Pacific side, increasing the level of the lake by raising the dam slightly, and then 2 sets of locks, the access channel for the locks on the Pacific side, the locks on the Atlantic, and the locks on the Pacific. And so we worked on this for a few years before it actually bid. And I just wanted to show you what the results of the bids were. And it was one of the most rewarding periods in my career when all of the contracts came in under what the estimates were. And although they chose not to show this to scale, the largest contract were these locks here, and they were estimated at 3.5 billion and came in at 3.2 billion. But there's a little bit more to the story if you're not familiar with that project. It was a best value selection. And again, I've been working on best value, and we're still refining best value work throughout the US here for the last 20 years. But the best value formula had a technical and price component, and it was bid at about 30% design. I helped them craft the RFP with that after some of what was done in Washington State and other design build projects across the US. And to get to that number, they did have the team with the highest winning score win the project. But if you look closely at the base price, the winning team, Unidos por el Canal, was $1 billion lower than the other teams. We really had to go back and think about how risks were allocated and how aggressive they were. They did end up with some cost escalation because they did come in too low. But that delivery method of putting all of the risks through one design build contract really, you can say it was successful and they met their contract, but there's also something systemically difficult about that when you have bids that range from 3 billion to 6 billion on one project. So I'm going to just take the last few minutes and share a little bit on the ITER project, which is it's the International Thermonuclear Energy Reactor. Definitely the most complex project I've ever worked on, and if you're not familiar with it, just Google ITER and it'll come up. The idea here is to contain the sun within a bottle. What they're doing is building a tokamak machine. This is 6 stories tall, and they're going to have heated plasma that's as hot as the sun in this donut here that's contained in a magnetic field, and these are magnets here around the orange that are cryogenically frozen. And this is all within a vacuum of space, basically a vacuum-like space. So we have some of the hottest temperatures in the universe and some of the coldest temperatures of the universe, all contained within a single vessel. And if you think that's complex, really the most complex thing about it I've found is that it's being built by multiple nations, and they're all contributing in-kind parts. So it's the US, EU, Russia, China, Japan, India, all contributing different parts that are built within their own countries and have to come together. So worked with this project for about 4 years, first with the US side and now with the international side. And I guess I just want to kind of summarize. This is a simple explanation of the dashboard that they have, but what I did for my master's degree and having to write our own Monte Carlo models and create our own risk registers is all being done now on an international project where people are contributing risks from all over the world into one central database. And that risk analysis is helping them to really build this project that will be done about 2030 is what they're looking at when they'll be actually generating energy from it. And so it's just kind of good to see this come full circle from where I was doing original work in the mid 90s to where it's really become operationalized now. So I give you all that again. Felt like I needed to share a little bit on the research and where we might go with this. And so I just had 2 more slides. I wanted to give you a couple of reflections. One's on my research. It's still hard for me to think about doing this for 30 years. I'm still feel like the student who was here at the University of Colorado back in 1990 many days. But I guess, I have seen a lot of evolution in these 3 areas, and I do think we're going to see quite a few changes in the future. The first I believe is that contracting is going to become much easier as we continue to automate our cost estimating. I think this is going to build trust, and owners will then be able to hire designers and contractors solely on qualifications, because everybody trusts the estimate and knows it's being done through building information modeling and better databases and the work with artificial intelligence. So those of you who are working in those areas, please continue to work. I think it's going to really help. That I think will also elevate our specialty contractors, our electricians, steel. All of our specialty contractors will become primary team members versus just being commodities. And I think that's really important for our industry to advance. And then risk management, I think with all of that being more transparent, is going to be what determines the success. I see how the risk management is working on the ITER project. I've seen how it's working on these large complex projects. And I think as we continue to evolve this as researchers, it'll really help us move our industry forward. So with that, I have one more set of reflections in just the last couple minutes here. And that is really, I want to talk about what I've learned in the last few years, kind of moving into administration. It's really, what do I want to be working on in my next 30 years? I truly, truly enjoy working with you all and working on research, but I just feel so privileged with what the university and what academia has given me. I want to make sure that it's there for my kids and for their kids in the future. And I think there's some real issues that we have with our academic system. And so I'll just say it as this. I think our past, our history that has gotten us all here has created some systemic exclusion. I don't think, again, I'd be able to get into the school that I'm dean of. I've really taken some time reflecting on our history and trying to make changes that I think we need to make. And so again, I love the institution, I love where we're going, but I think these are conversations that we have to have and we need to keep moving forward. So things I'm working on today is promoting inclusive student enrollment and management practices. I'm thrilled to tell you that just 2 years ago, we had 45% female engineers in our first year class here at the University of Colorado. So we're getting close to gender parity, and it takes so much work, and we really need to move that forward. I think that's something that we should all be striving for. If you look back here, my mentor that I mentioned, Joanne Silverstein, she's just finishing her career, but she was one of only 4 women in my college here. And we didn't have a female professor until the 1960s here at the university. So I really think, again, not just student, but we need to promote inclusive faculty hiring practices. And how can we do that? How can we open things up for more colleagues? And then finally, having 2 kids in college, one graduating and looking to the future, I'm really worried about the cost of college. And I think it's something we should all be looking at. So I would encourage you all to be thinking about putting your courses online, thinking about how we can reach more students with geographic boundaries, and again, thinking about how we can make public education accessible to all. So with that, I'm on time, and I just wanted to again thank everyone for the opportunity, and thank you for giving me the platform to say a few of those things at the end of the talk. So I'll give it back over to Min.
Thank you very much, Keith, for the very inspiring and intelligent speech. It was very, very inspiring and stimulating for our thoughts. Thank you very much for sharing that. Due to the constraint of time, we won't have a question and answer sessions. If you have any questions, you'll feel free to have it on chat. I will collect those questions and email it to Professor Keith Molina. And we're also going to record the speeches, and afterward we will share it with the CRC. Okay, so let's start with the second ASCE award speech. So on behalf of ASCE CI Construction Research Council, it's my great honor to welcome Professor Jessica Kaminsky of the University of Washington to give the keynote speech for ASCE Daniel W. Halpin Award for Scholarship in Construction. The Daniel W. Halpin Award for Scholarship in Construction was established in 2011 to recognize individuals who have demonstrated outstanding scholarship that advance construction engineering as a science. It was named in honor of Daniel W. Halpin, who is recognized as one of the leading authorities in the world on the use of simulation in studying construction process. The Halpin Award selection panel comprised of all former Halpin awardees and Professors Daniel Halpin, Chema de la Garza, and Jeff Russell. Professor Jessica Kaminsky conducts research in infrastructure for developing communities with a particular interest in topics of social sustainability. While she's particularly interested in the global south, she's also interested in any context that is experiencing significant change in basic civil infrastructure. The practical goal of her research is to make basic civil infrastructure better serve all the world's people by enabling increased human capabilities. Prior to entering academia, Professor Jessica Kaminsky spent 6 years working internationally for one of the world's largest engineering firms. She also received the Leavitt Young Scholar Award of the Engineering Project Organization Society in 2019. So without further ado, let's welcome Professor Jessica Kaminsky for her keynote speech for the ASCE Daniel W. Halpin Award. Welcome.
Thanks, Min, for that wonderful introduction. I pre-recorded this because we're trying to do some clever things with technology, and I wanted to avoid tech issues. But as I load that up, I do have to pause and just congratulate Keith. I had the honor of having Keith on my PhD committee when I was working there with Amy Jabernick-Will. That was always a pleasure. And it is just, for me, very personally meaningful to follow him in this context, as well as very intimidating, Keith. It's very unfair of you for being as wonderful as you are. But we're stuck with that, I suppose. So thank you all very much. And without further ado, here we go. My name is Jessica Kaminsky. I'm an associate professor in the University of Washington's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. It is truly one of the great honors of my career to be selected for the Daniel W. Halpin Award for Scholarship in Construction. So thank you, more than I can say, to our entire community. I study the social sustainability of infrastructure. I define socially sustainable infrastructure as infrastructure that removes various types of unfreedoms that leave people with little choice and little opportunity of exercising their agency. In other words, socially sustainable infrastructure is infrastructure that increases people's real opportunities to do and be what they have reason to value. By eliminating unfreedoms, I mean things like building sewers so you don't die of cholera from dirty water, for example, which rather expands your life choices. And yet, today, over 2 billion people on the planet don't have access to safe sanitation. Nearly 1 billion don't have electricity, and this list goes on. Perhaps unsurprisingly, these issues are closely linked to questions of race and gender and class. For example, my recently published work showed that women and people of color suffered disproportionately from vulnerability blind blanket mobility restrictions from the pandemic. In another project, we are linking kids' educational outcomes to the presence of school sanitation infrastructure. Broadly, my point is that engineering is the use of technology for people, which means that if we ignore the people part of the equation, we are doing bad engineering. And to be clear, by bad, I mean not only unjust, but also fragile, unsafe, inefficient, ineffective, bad engineering. More broadly yet, the point we all have to grapple with is that our organizations, institutions, processes, teaching, research, and, as my work shows, construction practices and the built environment itself exclude people based on categories like race and gender and class. For example, this means that women currently make up only 10% of the construction workforce, and just 3% of our tenured or tenure track faculty across all of civil and environmental engineering are African American. This is wrong, but we can change this together. In the words of construction's very own Dr. Denise Simmons from the University of Florida, we urgently need practical ways to up our equity quotient. So with that, for the rest of this Help and Talk, I'd like to invite each of you to join me in listening to Denise as she suggests concrete actions each of us can take to elevate diverse voices and up our equity quotient. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Denise R. Simmons, and I'm an associate professor in the Civil and Coastal Engineering Department at the University of Florida. My interdisciplinary construction engineering and management research centers people across 3 themes: diversity, equity, and inclusion, interactions between humans and technology, and competency development via education and training. My content knowledge includes the professional formation of civil engineers and models to sustain a workforce that evaluate diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is a privilege for me to address the Construction Research Congress on the occasion of my friend and colleague, Dr. Jessica Kaminsky, receiving the Halpin Award. Congratulations, Jessica, and thank you for giving me this time to address our construction engineering and management community. This talk is titled Shifting Perspectives to Constructively Improve Your Equity Quotient. In honor of Jessica's efforts to positively impact equity through research, teaching, and service, I will define and briefly summarize the CEM literature on equity, discuss policies, practices, and partnerships, or the 3 Ps, and suggest concrete actions for all of us in CEM, that all of us in CEM can take to raise our equity quotient. I acknowledge my lifelong awareness of and experiences with deep-seated systemic racism and sexism that exists in our society and impedes progress towards achieving equity. I further acknowledge that while I am acquainted with these issues, I am still in the novice stage of giving voice to and making meaning of these experiences. I know that many of you are already using your power to positively impact equity. I applaud your efforts. For you, consider having critical equity conversations throughout this conference and with others you encounter in the coming days, weeks, and months. Certainly, you can call these conversations whatever you would like, as long as you take the opportunity to speak with persons with whom you encounter and are in community with. My hope for such conversations is that it boosts your confidence to act, and it increases the equity quotient of the persons you speak with. I would like to start here with a definition of equity and equity quotient that will frame this discussion. Equity involves distributing resources based on the needs of the recipients. This simple definition leads us to focus on those who are in need or at risk. Take a moment to ponder your response to the following questions. How do you define in need and at risk? Can you name persons you know who are in need or at risk? Consider persons you serve, those who serve you, and those you consider peers. Consider also your work unit, persons at all levels of employment, courses you teach, the research lab that you lead. Consider the research collaborators with which you work, the persons in your community and or city. Oftentimes, those who are in need and or at risk look just fine on the outside. I want to move to defining equity quotient. Equity quotient is a term I am conceptualizing here for the first time. So my definition is that it's a number representing a person's ability to recognize an equity and take action immediately, using their power and privilege to bring the issue to light, work to resolve the issue, and be prepared to repeat that cycle over and over again for those in need and at risk. A person with a low equity quotient, for example, inflicts microaggression and macroaggressions on others, or is a bystander, simply watching, not acting. In contrast, someone with a high equity quotient acts to engage those with a lower quotient, is known for consistently speaking up to affirm and elevate the voices of those at risk and in need, and seeks no accolades for doing so. It is a fallacy to argue that achieving equity requires a person or group of people to gain at the expense of another group, thereby lessening the status of that group or person. That is not equity. It's also a fallacy to argue that discussions of actions towards equity is synonymous with blaming or shaming a person or a group of people. Equity isn't about pitting groups against each other. Now that we've have the terms defined, let's ground this topic in construction literature. In 2012, Sang and Powell found that construction is yet to be considered a fully diverse, equitable, and inclusive industry sector due to the structural prejudices and unconscious biases that exist throughout the industry. Further, those same two authors in 2013 stated that challenges related to masculinity, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, language, age, and other stereotypes have negatively impacted the experiences of marginalized groups and minorities working within the construction industry. The construction industry has tried several strategies to resolve the inequities that exist. However, these efforts have failed to promote equity. Lin et al. In their 2018 study published in the Journal of Management and Engineering found that training modules deployed throughout the US construction industry failed to address the needs of Hispanic and female construction workers due largely to their reliance on traditional approaches such as lectures and written documents. In his 2013 article published in Construction Management and Economics, Paul Chan found non-heterosexuals within the UK construction industry oftentimes experience higher levels of bullying and harassment than in other industries. In recent years, more literature has been published describing the nature and prevalence of aggression and bullying in higher education towards women and persons from racial and ethnic groups that are underrepresented. I want to take a moment to list just a few of the aggressions I've experienced throughout my working career. I've been called the N-word. I've been spat on more than once and in my face. I've been told that I check exactly 2 boxes. I've been mused with that NSF must be funding more career awards when my proposal was funded. I've had group meetings scheduled during the only 3-hour block in a week when I had a known conflict. I've had support removed and be told suddenly, without warning, and told to simply take it up with my boss. The ease in which each person did these actions is still fairly memorable. It was, though, my reaching out to those who were in formal positions to be helpers that I experienced systemic racism. From this summary of the literature and my personal experience, the groups in need and possibly at risk in the construction industry and in academia include women, persons from racial and ethnic groups that are underrepresented in science, technology, and engineering, and LGBTQ persons. I was astonished to learn by looking at some of the ASCE by the numbers that I am 1 in 56 in the whole United States. I am 1 of 56 African Americans in a tenure or tenure track position in engineering in all of the United States. That's amazing. We really need a critical number of people who have an ability to achieve a high equity quotient and to begin to have them act or encourage them to act in all the spaces where racism and sexism exist. So now I ask that you consider these centering questions. Are the acts or achievements of your work, that is research, teaching, and service, directed towards and intended to benefit women, those who identify as Hispanic and or Black, other racial and ethnic groups that are underrepresented in science, technology, and engineering, and LGBTQ persons? Do you value input from these groups and believe their input improves your work and ability to return a greater benefit back to these groups? How, if at all, are you working to include and promote these groups in your work? If you understand that equity is not an item on your to-do list where you just need to perform a few actions and then you're done. Instead, if you believe equity is integrated into or integrated with standards of your behavior, you may have a high equity quotient. The reasons to strive for equity are many. Overcoming racism and sexism and creating equitable work environments can help the construction industry attract and retain professionals and skilled trained members of the workforce and achieve both long-term and short-term gains. In a 2018 AGC report linked diverse and inclusive organizations to having 2.3 times higher cash flow than per full-time employee. So I ask, are you prepared to use your power and integrate into your duties and responsibilities efforts towards equitable policies, practices, and partnerships, the 3 Ps, throughout the areas where you work? I hope so. I move now to a discussion of these 3 Ps and suggest ways you can take actions towards raising your equity quotient. First, policies. I'd like to discuss 2 policies from ASCE, 1 policy from ABET, and discuss P&T considerations. ABET has a code of ethics that in 2017, it updated with language to include this quote: consider the diversity of the community and endeavor in good faith to include diverse perspectives in the planning and performance of their professional service. These diverse perspectives that ASCE is speaking of include those from women and racial and ethnic minorities. ASCE also has a policy statement numbered 417 that's related to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. With this policy, it states the engineering profession and ASCE membership lack representation of people from identity groups that provide the diverse perspectives of the communities we serve. The lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the civil engineering profession limits capacity to effectively meet societal needs. Over the last several decades, progress has been made to varying degrees through awareness, education, and action. Currently, more efforts are needed to fully realize inclusive and equitable practices in our profession, to assure representation of the rich diversity of our global communities, and to provide and to produce just societal outcomes for our work. ABET goes on to address how students look at diverse perspectives as well. So in 2019, ABET defined teams as more than one person working towards a common goal that should include individuals of diverse backgrounds, skills, or perspectives. Prior to 2019, the only diversity required on teams was disciplinary. So building and assessing teams under this new requirement reinforces to students the importance of inclusive teams and the need to value diverse perspectives. Last policy is to talk about P&T considerations. Now, I know this is fraught with a lot of different complexities, but hear me out on this one. The call here is to add justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion as an assessment criteria and weight it at least, give it a weight of at least 20% of a faculty member's overall evaluation for promotion, tenure, and continued appointment. I recognize policies around tenure and promotion vary from institution to institution and include considerations for whether an institution is teaching intensive, research intensive, doctoral degree granting, and on and on. I also recognize these policies are subjective. For this policy, I seek again to focus on raising one's equity quotient and how you do that while serving on a tenure and promotion committee. Simply the ask here is be proactive. So besides adding maybe a 20% evaluation, be proactive. Seek out casual conversations with women, persons from racial and ethnic groups that are represented in your area for which you have purview over from your committee duties for P&T. Look for people and talk with them about their tenure and promotion process. Talk to them about how they're integrating their own identities and that of others in their work. And why is that important to them? Recommend them for awards within and outside of your institution. Look for ways to incorporate their expertise in your work, to collaborate with them and in the work of others. Protect them from service beyond the initial year of their hire. These are just a few examples of what you can do. I hope these spur other ideas for you. One personal example I want to share about being proactively supported occurred when one of my manuscripts recently received an Editor's Choice Award from an ASCE journal. When my school head learned of this, he immediately wrote to me and said, "Denise, what's your paper award rate right now? I estimated 20% of your papers received awards in the past 3 years. An amazing rate for anyone." Now, I had not been keeping track of this metric, but he was. I imagined him tucking away this little nugget and positive note in getting it ready to support me for my next promotion or HR action. In that moment, I was both grateful to receive the award and to have a school director who undoubtedly has a high equity quotient. He has acted in many other ways that consistently lets me know he values my scholarship and contributions to my department, college, and university. So what can you do in this area of policy? First, I would ask that you reread the ASCE Code of Ethics and Policy Statement 417, as well as the ABET student outcomes. The next three suggestions come from an article published by Dr. Yvette Pearson titled Inclusion, Diversity Now Factor into Accreditation Standards. Sorry about the whole thing. The three suggestions here are to ensure your academic climate and culture are conducive to everyone's success. Update your ethics lessons to ensure they reflect the most recent engineering society codes and ethics, and incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in your teaching and assessment. If needed, reach out to faculty members from another campus unit to help you with this. Engage with industry professionals and societies to better understand the need and expectations for diversity, equity, and inclusion in engineering practice. And finally, the last suggestion I have is to simply be proactive in engaging women and persons from racial and ethnic minority groups. And that's especially if you're serving on P&T committees. I want to move on to the second P, which is practices. So the first practice I want to share is a design and construction practice that was being led by the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED. It's the most widely used green building rating system, or one of the most widely used. Not very long ago, they added a social and equity credit to their rating system. As presented, the credits are meant to impact building practices, but the material offered by LEED can also be used to impact as a teaching aid and therefore impact our instructional practices. While the credit relates to social equity and not specifically gender expressions, racial and ethnic minorities, LEED does mention underserved populations, which include those of lower social economic status, gender, race, ethnicity, and disability status. These credits are designed to address social inequity from the perspective of everyone who is touched or impacted by the building, including the community, the project team, and the supply chain. And there's separate credits for each of those categories. I want to focus on one of those categories, which is social equity within the community. The goal for this one is to help projects address disparities in access and social inequities within a project's own community. This credit is intended as a starting place to help green building projects understand their relationships to impacted communities and implement targeted strategies that address social equity. Again, not specifically noting race or gender, but this is implied here. As an example of one project that earned this credit is the Othello Square Affordable Ownership Building in Seattle, Washington. The Othello Square started construction last year, will be a 4-building complex comprising a school, a children's clinic, affordable commercial space, and the affordable ownership building. This building will be a limited equity cooperative, which allows low-income owners to purchase a below market rate unit with limits on the amount of profit they can make if and when they resell. This is exclusively for families, for families at or below 80% of the area's mean income. Because local families often include multi-generations as well as refugees, the spaces in this unit are very large and include 3 bedrooms. So the spaces, this building is meant to serve not only a housing need, but also to build wealth for these families. It also addresses preserving multicultural heritage by having language and language instruction included, and community gardens that feature culturally sensitive food. So I want to move on to instructional practices which are linked to these LEAD projects. As I hinted, there are 7 projects that LEAD has highlighted on their website that we can use as teaching aids. And this is a way for us to elevate the voices, or how these voices are elevated in the design and construction process. So these projects are available on the LEAD website. It's titled Equity in Design, 7 Case Studies. Last, I would like to talk about business practices. In a paper I published with co-authors in the Journal of Management and Engineering this year, we sought to enable the assessment of workforce diversity, equity, and inclusion in the construction industry by identifying and determining the level of influence of applicable indicators revealing diversity, equity, and inclusion at the workforce level. We centered the concerns of gender expressions, racial and ethnic equity while conducting this study. The metrics related to equity are equitable pay, compensation at the industry level, equity, social justice, and non-discrimination policy statements, pay structure transparency, equitable pay / compensation at the company level, and merit-based transparent recruitment and promotion. These are just a start. We look forward to continuing this study to expand these metrics. So here, what do you do? I would suggest you follow the steps that LEAD listed on its website that are steps towards more equitable projects. And those steps are: own your privilege, bring owners along. Number 3, dedicate resources for equity work. Number 4, look around you. What this means is working together, make a list of people and groups the project might affect. Are these stakeholders being heard? Number 5, include and listen. And number 6, act. The final P is partnerships. So here, community partnerships were already discussed under practices. So now what I'll do is focus on actions towards equity for research partnerships. Forming research collaborations is another opportunity to consider equity. Here are a few questions I suggest you ask yourself. Does your team reflect diverse perspectives? For example, women and racial ethnic minorities? Have you asked everyone for their preferred method of communication? What processes are in place to ensure all voices are heard, included, and valued? Have you considered the differing needs of team members? What are the 5 guiding principles that was also included for an ethnic and equity perspective are included in the on the slide. This concludes my remarks and suggestions on how to raise your equity quotient. I mentioned earlier that my school had an equity quotient, high equity quotient. It goes without saying that Jessica Kaminsky also has a very high equity quotient. It has been a great honor to me that she has yielded this time for me to have this conversation with you. And this slide includes how to get in contact with me beyond this. Thank you.
Congratulations, Jessica. Thank you, Jessica and Denise, very much. This is really a wake-up call for our community. It is very important and timely to make our voice heard, to ask those critical questions, and for us to take actions to make changes. Thank you, Jessica and Denise, to bring this to everyone's attention so we can have a better community. Okay, our next ASCE award speech will be done by Mr. John Dunham of Connecticut Department of Transportation. He will give the keynote speech for the 2021 Roebling Award for his leadership and strategic thinking that encourages innovation and creativity to meet the unique challenges of project site conditions. Mr. John Dunham is the district engineer responsible for administering all District 4 contracts and providing quality assurance for Connecticut Department of Transportation District 4 Construction Office. He consistently delivered the largest department projects on time and on budget. Projects of note include Pearl Harbor Memorial Bridge Project, which is the first extrodosed cable bridge constructed in the United States, Connecticut Fast Track, and I-84 widening in Waterbury. Mr. Dunham is the current member of Board of Directors for the American Segmental Bridge Institute. He has been actively involved as a leader in community serving as chairman of board of Mattabesett District Wastewater Treatment Facility. This regional facility is the Connecticut State's 5th largest wastewater treatment facility, treating wastewater flows from several communities. Please join me to welcome Mr. John Dunham for his keynote speech for the ASCE 2021 Roebling Award. Welcome.
There we go. Take it off mute and that might help out a little bit. Thank you, man. I appreciate the introduction. Hopefully you can see me okay. I panicked a little bit before getting on because I was having trouble accessing Zoom. And sometimes with our state equipment, they can be very restrictive. I was able to get on with my iPhone, but through the help of Min and a few others, I was able to access it. So I'll be able to show a few of the slides, hopefully, that I have. Well, first of all, I just want to start off by saying thank you to my nominators and supporters, Cliff Snexnader, Yongkup Chang, and Paul Van Olden were fabulous in supporting me for this. And so I want to be sure to thank them. I've had many mentors throughout my career, too many to even mention throughout here, but without them, I wouldn't have grown to be the professional that I am. So I'm just going to put in a plug as we grow a little bit older to remember as we're working with the younger staff out there that we are looked at and viewed as mentors. And, we're, especially as we take on these leadership roles, and you may not think a few words of encouragement here and there mean much, or maybe even a stern talk once in a while. Sometimes that's needed to address an issue, but those things mean a lot, I think, throughout someone's career who's serious in growing and developing. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also want to say how humbled I am to be selected for this award. I'm sure that statement's been said by other recipients, but I can't help but stating that at the start. To be associated with the name Roebling in any way is quite an honor and achievement in the civil engineering field. And to be selected for this individual achievement is somewhat contrary to what I believe the award really means, because I believe in the team approach when building projects. And that is often an overused statement, but working with our design teams, planning teams, contractors, and construction teams to get a job built is always a challenge. Relationships have to be built, team interests have to be considered. But I understand that every successful project has leaders to help solve problems and find solutions where others see only obstacles. And in order to be a successful leader, you need to consider everyone's interests and goals on a project. And understanding that concept is really what drives the success on a project. And something I believe the Roeblings embraced as designers and bridge builders. And I'm sure the Roeblings did not work alone, but they worked with teams. But they did provide the necessary leadership driving a project to its success. And you know, I'm sure that the Roeblings believed in seeking new and better solutions to problems. And that's the mantra that should be really followed through on every project. Understanding that and you know, and understanding that leadership is really perseverance and growth over time. So I just want to start with that sort of opening statement, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself, and then I kind of want to recount some of the large projects that I've worked on throughout my career, and talk about a few problems that we encountered on those jobs and how we solved them and what we did to ensure success. And I think that's really the takeaway that I want to sort of talk about from today. I've been with the Connecticut Department of Transportation 31 years. I'm actually currently the construction administrator. So I've since been promoted from district engineer that was mentioned in the original bio, and I've been construction administrator for the last year and a half, meaning I oversee all construction for the state of Connecticut. That's highway, bridge, rail, just about anything that we build eventually funnels up to myself. I've spent my career in construction, with the exception of maybe about 2 months. I moved to a design office within the department, and I said, well, this isn't really for me. And I jumped right back to construction. It's just, I think construction's been in my blood, and that it's just really what I enjoy. And I've worked on many of Connecticut's largest construction initiatives over my 30-year career. I started off, I had a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Statistics from the University of Connecticut. And I came to the Connecticut DOT as a construction inspector and kind of worked my way up, pretty much holding all roles from construction inspector to chief inspector to project engineer to supervisor and all the way up to where I am now. And it's been a long journey, but it goes by quickly, unfortunately. So I'm going to get into a little bit of talking about some of the projects that I was on and how they kind of shaped how I think about building projects and how I think about solving problems on jobs. Early in my career, I was a chief inspector on a project that really taught me that valuable lesson. The Yellow Mill project was the initial project of a $400 million Bridgeport corridor reconstruction program in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The scope of the Yellow Mill project consisted of the reconstruction of a bridge carrying 95 over the Yellow Mill Channel and Stratford Avenue, as well as the replacement of Interchange 29. The structure carried over 130,000 vehicles per day on a heavily traveled section of I-95, while Stratford Avenue functioned as a vital gateway to the east side of Bridgeport, Connecticut. The attached structures carried entrance and exit ramps at the east end of the bridge. The final design for the project proposed 5 major stages for the reconstruction of the Yellow Mill Bridge due to the limited width of the existing structures, needed to maintain 6 lanes of traffic during each stage. As a consequence, multiple longitudinal construction joints were proposed for both the substructure and superstructure concrete. In addition, temporary support for the superstructure was required due to the incomplete construction of the substructure elements during various stages. The project was awarded in fall of '96 for $52 million. At the initial partnering session for the project, the contractor proposed a major revision to the traffic control plan, reducing the number of construction stages from 5 to 2. These revisions were accomplished by temporarily widening 1/2 of the existing bridge to carry all traffic while reconstruction of the other half took place. In the first phase, the contractor proposed to extend the existing pier caps to the south to carry an additional stringer for the widened superstructure. The contractor proposed to relocate an entrance ramp in order to utilize the width of the acceleration lane as a travel lane. A temporary ramp was proposed for the east approach to the bridge. The required acceleration lane was provided by installing 3 of the permanent girders on steel vents constructed on the north side of the bridge. So this was kind of an important element. They were proposing to use permanent girders in a temporary condition. That was one of the unique things that they were proposing. And then upon completion of that phase, the girders were then reinstalled at their permanent location. So this whole proposal that the department looked at and our team was looking at was, there was considerable amount of risk associated with that, and whether we could get it all approved or not. But our team certainly looked at that and started to review it and give it careful consideration and not just dismiss it as, well, build it under the original plan. So after careful study of the proposal, the team confirmed that the original project design parameters were satisfied. It also found that the reduction in the number of stages eliminated several construction joints in the bridge. Further building the bridge in halves eliminated the need for the temporary pier supports, a substantial risk to the project. Finally, a significant reduction in the contract time would reduce the coordination issues with adjacent Bridgeport reconstruction projects. Prior to the project, the Connecticut DOT had never entered into a design build type of contract because of the perceived risk inherent in such an arrangement. So this was a first that we'd even ever considered, that we would say, okay, the contractor could actually design a portion of these works and we would accept this. Remember, this was back in the early 90s and design build wasn't a common theme. We didn't even have legislation in Connecticut that would allow it. So CONDOT found that a design build change order was the only viable means to accomplish all the necessary revisions to the design plans without delaying the physical construction. Ultimately, the design build change resulted in approximately 4.7 million of new construction and 4 million of deleted work for a net increase of only $700,000. In exchange for this relatively small increase in contract value, the Connecticut DOT improved the quality of the final product, eliminated substantial risk from the project, and realized the time savings of 1 year. So most importantly from all that, I learned that there were many ways to build a job and how to get a job done with the right leadership. Ultimately, our team was awarded a leadership award for our efforts that year. And, certainly was a project that we were all proud of. So from there, I began a 15-year journey working and leading multiple projects on what we called the I-95 New Haven Harbor Crossing Corridor Improvement Program. This was by far Connecticut's most expansive capital initiative in their history. It was a $2 billion multimodal program comprised of over 31 projects. The centerpiece of the program included a first of its kind for the United States extra-dose cable stay bridge. The success of this program can be attributed to a very talented group of engineers and contractors who truly exhibited teamwork and innovative thinking. Roebling, I'm sure, would have been proud of the efforts of all the individuals working on this project for how they solved problems, and the teamwork exhibited on this project was certainly a key to its success. Highlights of that my career was utilizing that innovative way of thinking that I learned on that earlier project during the construction of the new Pearl Harbor Memorial Bridge, which we more commonly refer to as the Q Bridge here in Connecticut, because it spans the Quinnipiac River. I was brought into that project in the early phases of the design to act as construction's design liaison. So I was there to interact from the construction office to offer input as we were designing the job to get a better design, help us in construction get a better understanding of how the job would be constructed. The study had been completed and phases of the project. The type study had been completed for the signature bridge, had been selected as the best fit for the crossing. And the particular bridge is often referred to as the gateway to New England because it's located just 45 miles from the New York border. And I believe also, again, that Roebling probably understood the need to overcome obstacles. And that's really what we embraced every day during the construction of this bridge. And there were two obstacles that come to mind that I believe changed the project and really drove the success of the job. And I'm going to describe those two particular obstacles and how they made a difference on the project and helped enable the project to remain on schedule. We'll see if I can share my screen here, and I'll have a few photos as I go along. We'll try that. And we got it here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here. There's a picture of the new bridge right there with a kind of a.
Yeah, I cannot see your screen.
You're not seeing it? Okay, hold on here. Let me give it a try. Hang on just a second.
I can see it now.
You can see it now. Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I clicked share on the screen there.
Mhm.
So during construction of the foundations for the new Q Bridge, the contractor encountered a problem with one of the large diameter deep drilled shafts. The shafts were 8 foot in diameter and some were close to 200 feet deep, embedded into bedrock. During the pour of one of the shafts, unknown to the contractor, the tremie pipe, which extended to the bottom of the shaft, had broken off at the bottom of the pour. It wasn't realized. Oh, hold on here. My screen is not advancing for some reason. There we go. Should be able to see the next screen here.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. During the construction of one of these foundations or one of these drilled shafts, the tremie pipe had broken off at the bottom of the pour. Now, it wasn't realized until the last few sections of the tremie were removed that the contractor discovered that they were missing 20 feet of pipe. Nothing could be done at the time but to wait the results of the cross-hole sonic testing, which checked for anomalies within the concrete shaft. As was expected, inclusions were discovered near the bottom of the shaft, indicating that the shaft was a failure. Redrilling a new shaft, aside from expensive, was also a schedule buster. And there's a shot of the tremie pipe that had sheared off. You should be able to see that. And the team immediately went to work examining possible solutions to the problem. We were able to devise a design that essentially re-engineered the reinforcing within the foundation to transfer the loads to the adjacent shafts, entirely eliminating the bad shaft completely. Of course, additional costs had to be worked out with the contractor that would not be the responsibility of the owner, but the team focused on the solution rather than the problem, and the job was able to progress on schedule. Just another example of providing leadership and making sure a quality project was delivered on time. And then ultimately, one of the things the contractor did, which you should be able to see in the next slide, is he actually engineered the tremie pipe for all the future drilled shafts, so we wouldn't have that problem again. So it was really a twofold solution. One, how do we stop it from happening in the future? And two, how do we manage with the shaft that's pretty much a failure, and what can we do to re-engineer and keep the project moving? So that was really was a significant improvement for the job. Another large challenge related to the construction of the bridge were the contract milestones for completing each phase of the project. And here's a shot right here, an aerial view of the overall project, and you can see off to the right the interchange that abutted the project that needed to kind of be coordinated as we were building it to meet all the reconstruction of that interchange. As is often the case in highway construction projects, the project was designed in a way that maintained the flow of traffic through the area. The bridge had to be built while maintaining an ADT of 160,000 vehicles per day. That meant complicated staging was necessary to ensure traffic flowed through the work zones, all while maintaining tight construction schedules. The contractor's team started examining different ways to construct the bridge to help speed construction. The team looked for alternatives that would minimize the low headroom condition for construction of the large diameter drilled shafts that needed to be constructed for the foundation work. There's a shot of the towers, and here I've got one. This one shows the low headroom condition. They looked for ways to demolish a critical piece of the old bridge to remove much sooner than originally planned. And according to the original plan, southbound traffic was maintained on the old bridge while tower construction began below. The team proposed a revised plan that crossed southbound traffic to the northbound lanes of the old Q Bridge, thus allowing the river spans of the old bridge to be demolished much earlier. Now, one of the complicated pieces of this proposal was the resulting alignment resembled a modified S-curve. And on the project, we referred to that alignment as a chicane. And so for those that are race fans, they usually often refer to chicanes on racetracks to help slow race cars down, which is certainly not ideal for a major interstate. So go ahead, Min.
It's not me, it's somebody unmuted, so please
Okay,
note.
no problem. So selling this idea to our DOT management was the challenge. Could the alignment be designed in a way to meet the necessary traffic standards for the busy highway and still meet the needs of the project? That is where our team worked closely with the designer, contractor, and construction team to be sure all the needs were being met. Ultimately, this revised alignment was approved, and as a result of this teamwork exhibited throughout this process, the first barrel of the new bridge was opened 3 months earlier than required by contract, and the northbound traffic was moved onto the new structure. The construction team applied lessons learned from prior phases of the project to complete the overall contract 5 months ahead of schedule. Yeah, that was exceptional. Now, why did we finish ahead of schedule and under budget? Really?
Sorry, David, could you mute this person? I think it's Oscar Wong. Thank you.
Okay. Why did we finish ahead of schedule and under budget? Because the answer was always yes. And really, that's really the theme of what we did and how we constructed this project. Anytime there was a problem, anytime we saw an obstacle, we didn't say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. We worked as a team to help try and solve the problems and really understand the issue and get it resolved and move the project along. So from there, another project that I worked on of significant importance to the department, requiring intense teamwork, was a highway widening project in Waterbury, Connecticut. This $300 million section of Interstate 84 was planned to improve safety, operation, and highway capacity on Interstate 84 in the city of Waterbury. Prior to the implementation of the project, the section of Interstate 84 experienced heavy traffic congestion due to high traffic volumes, steep topography, and a lack of roadway capacity, and design deficiencies in ramps and weave areas. One solution I encouraged as a leader on this project was to meet every Friday morning to discuss issues and solve problems, strategize different staging techniques and sequencing that allow for faster construction and the minimization of delays to the project. How could we get answers to problems faster? That was really the theme of those meetings. Discuss the various staging and make sure issues weren't being ignored, not addressed, and we would try to solve them or get to the right people that could solve those issues. These meetings, I believe, helped deliver this project over 1 year early and complete the project within its original budget. The project completed in 2018 improved traffic flow along 84 and local nearby streets, reducing traffic congestion along mainline and local roads and ramp weaves, and has reduced traffic accident rates. The traffic enhancements results in improvements in air quality, noise, aesthetics, and the quality of life within the area. The project was transformative for the area by reducing peak hour travel times by almost 20 minutes. So in conclusion, in accepting this award is certainly a highlight of my career, but I do believe the only reason I'm winning this award is because of the teams I've worked with on the projects that I've been involved with throughout my career. No project is ever built by an individual, but it's by a group. And although I do understand any successful project does have key personnel and leaders who help solve problems and see opportunities where others see obstacles. Those leaders then help their teams be successful. So these behaviors help ensure projects are completed successfully by fostering a unified and consistent approach to solving problems. And that's how I believe projects become successful. And I've been employing that throughout my career, and will continue to do so, and really trying to mentor our younger staff now with those values and goals, and really try to teach them. And that's what I have. Thank you, man. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Congratulations again, John, for winning this prestigious ASCE award. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable experience and insights based on decades of the first-hand management and leadership experience. Thank you. On behalf of ASCE Construction Research Council, I'd like to thank Professor Keith Molina, Professor Jessica Kaminsky, Professor Denise Simmons, and Mr. John Dunham for giving us the valuable, enlightening, and inspiring speeches. You all set great examples for our community as researchers, leaders, achievers, and brave pioneers. Thank you. I also want to thank our audience for attending this session and gave great comments on chat. You guys are the best. The recording of the speeches will be shared by CRC shortly after this session. At last, I want to say, please take care, stay in touch, and I look forward to seeing you in the future CRC events. Thank you very much for your time and support for this session.